everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Ultimate Effort Show with Alex.
And Joe.
And, oh my gosh, we have a great episode lined up today, Joe.
Yes, we do.
This time we're going to talk all about timers and how they can improve your game.
Yep.
And this concept of pressure.
Yes.
And I think we need to start with a basic definition for folks who are not familiar, who may be joining us from another system. Maybe you're not used to using timers. Maybe you're not used to time pressure in your game. So, like, what is it? What is the concept? Right. Basically, it is just a mechanic. In this case, it's a die mechanic. It's another tool for your DM toolbox.
Yes.
And the only thing that a timer does is it adds imminence to a situation.
Yep.
And so you can just imagine, like when a timer ticks down, maybe you're timing a turkey or maybe you're timing a roast. Like when the clock hits 0, something happens. That's it.
Right. For better or worse, something happens.
For better or worse. And in the traditional case, usually you just roll a d4. You roll it, whatever number comes up. That's how many rounds need to expire in the traditional case.
Yep. And this isn't something that's hidden. The GM's not like tucking this thing away.
Correct.
He's rolling it. Everybody's seeing that timer die is a 3. And then he sets it out in front of all the players.
Well, yeah. Well, you.
So they're seeing this thing happen.
Yeah. Roll it in the open. Hey, I'm going to roll a DM timer. Now, do they know what it is? No, they don't. But I'm going to roll a DM timer out in front of everybody. It lands on a 3, and then I stick it out there for everybody to see. And every time it comes back to DM's turn, I'm going to count it down by 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
And everybody's watching. You know something's coming. The hairs on the back of your neck standing up. That kind of pressure drops in the room. Things seem a little quiet. Timer ticks down to 1. What the is coming here?
So the timer's going to tick down, and when it hits 0, something happens. Now that something doesn't always have to be bad. Many times it is, but it doesn't always have to be bad. That timer could hit 0 and something good could happen. I recommend you mix it up here and there, right? But usually when, as Joe correctly points out, the timer represents this mounting pressure on the players and, frankly, an impetus to act because there is some imminence, like something important will happen when that timer hits 0.
Yep. And as a GM, one of the greatest uses of this tool is to apply some pressure or to add that, like as Alex said, to add that imminence. It gives you kind of a dial it's random, but it only uses a D4, so it's not too huge, but it adds that extra kind of imminence that can really help propel a game along.
Absolutely. Now, one of the questions that we get asked all the time, Joe, is, hey, all y'all over there in ICRPG land, you're rolling these crazy timers left and right. Do I have to have a timer in every game? And
no.
Do I have to have a timer in every encounter, every situation?
No, not at all. No.
You don't. Just like anything, it is a tool in your DM toolbox. When it's the right tool, it's the right tool, right? But,
exactly.
But don't just use it like a hammer and think every scenario is a nail where you have to, bust out your hammer and use a timer. That's not the case at all.
Right.
However, I would say where the timer really shines, right, Joe, is when you're sort of trying to propel your players towards action.
Yes.
And I think in particular, sometimes, because remember, what do we talk about in terms of being the big monster, right? The big monster that you're trying to avoid as a DM is aimlessness at your table.
Yep, that dead space where everybody's looking around wondering what to do.
Yeah, what should we do? Should we just murder Hobo, this NPC who walked up? Like, no.
Right.
Like, let me put some time pressure on you and propel you to action. So what could that look like? It could look like, well, we just cleared these room of spiders, and now we want to take a big rest. Well, guess what? The spiders aren't going to just sit there and let you just camp out in their lair, dude. Like, you cannot do that. So, you guys are more. You guys are going to hang out? Oh, no problem. Let me just roll. Oh, 3 rounds, more are going to show up.
Right. Make some recovery rolls, cast some spells, but in 3 rounds, you have the imminent feeling. You can see the twitching in the webs as something else is coming along from elsewhere in the place.
That does not feel good.
Right? Like rest well. You can almost see it.
Yeah. And I just use this mechanic. Frankly, the sort of devastating effect in our multi-crew game.
Ooh, yeah.
Because you guys were fighting these 2 flaming skulls, and that doesn't seem like such a big deal that there are 2 of them. Except that every time you manage to do a heart of effort, 10 hit points of damage and kill one, that individual skull gets a timer and it regenerates. It pulls back together.
Yes. Even if it's shattered and scattered.
Yes, in D4 rounds, it reforms.
There's a way to stop it permanently. We just didn't have time to try and figure that out because the pressure was on. Yeah. There were innocents everywhere. We were trying to save the souls of innocents and deal with these flaming skulls that were just...
Correct.
It was brutal. The dice were not on our side.
Yeah, and I dare say that encounter wouldn't have been half as interesting if you guys just killed those 2 skulls and moved on and didn't feel that pressure. Right?
Because the pressure was on. They followed us.
Yeah. And part of it too was you had to get across a bridge, and then there were those souls would like burn you if you like got too close to them. So there was all this sort of mounting pressure on the players that the timer really helped drive home.
It was a culmination of a lot of things we've kind of covered in previous episodes leading up to now. We had innocence in peril. We had the environment. We had this whole bridge to navigate with the gap we had to try and jump. And we had the threat of these reforming flaming skulls coming right in behind us. So like the pressure was there, and it all came together beautifully.
Yeah, and they were a threat. They were a very dangerous threat because they could drop you in one flame gout. Or they could also inflict the pestilence on you and turn you into one of those wandering souls.
Yeah, which were the very things we were trying to save.
Yep, exactly. So like
pressure on all sides.
Super tight. Would not have been possible without, every 1d4 rounds, those dead skulls would reform and they were constantly hounding the players.
Yeah.
That D4 timer could mean a lot of things, right? It could mean reinforcements show up.
Yes, which is always a fun one to throw on players.
Always a fun one.
And they're like, when they are deep in it and like, boom, you've just rolled another timer and it's a 1. And they're like, oh my God, another wave. And they're haggard and there's enemies everywhere. And then that timer expires and look to the east on the morning of the 3rd day. Gandalf is just ridden over the top, followed by the, Riders of Rohan. I know I'm going back. I just watched it recently. It's still fresh.
I love it. Ride out with me. Ride out with me.
Exactly. Like sometimes it's allies. And that's a cool thing.
I love that scene.
Yeah.
Your timer could be tied to a trap, right? So like in D4 rounds, like the trash compactor will crush you, right?
Yes.
Or the ball rolling like will flatten you.
Yes.
Right? Or in D4 rounds, the wall of spikes inching towards you will impale you. That kind of stuff. Timers could also be tied to the environment, right? So like in D4 rounds, right, the lava will rise.
Yep. This room will be inaccessible and covered in lava in this many rounds. Better move.
Yeah, or even a classic like like a water trap, like you walk in the room and the door slams shut, the tiny little holes. Yep, and next thing you know, it starts filling with water. Right, D4 rounds, man. If you don't like get to that hatch and
the elevator, Big Trouble in Little China.
Yep, exactly. That kind of stuff. Or sometimes you can put a timer on terrain. Right, so like in D4 rounds, like the Velociraptors will break through, like they're banging at the door, like they will. You're seeing the dents, or the aliens. Right, in D4 rounds, they will be in the room. Right? Yep. That kind of stuff.
Heck yeah.
I love it too. Like D4 rounds, like the terrain will break away. So like,
right, you can see the ice cracking already.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That kind of move.
That kind of stuff. D4 rounds, your ship will crash, like all those sorts of things. And those examples are in the book, page 92 of Master Edition. So if you're curious about timers,
Yep.
um, uh, all those examples
First of the three
there.
T's there.
The first of the three T's. You know,
Mm-hmm.
From my standpoint, usually though, I was playing threats first, and then I come back to the timer piece, right? Not always, but usually that's how I work.
Right. There's also a couple other timers listed farther back on 106.
Yeah, let's get into that, Joe. Talk to us about some of these different types of timers. Although I particularly want to talk about the world timer.
Right. Well, I know we kind of did just cover quite a few of the different types of timers, or different ways to use them.
Right.
But yeah, like the very first note up there about the explained imminence, it's rolling to see what the timer does. What is this next thing? And it flat out says in here that it doesn't always have to be a mystery, because sometimes you can, just like it mentions, you see a group of shapes swimming up. I know plenty of us, both Alex and I in our games, is, you could hear like large groups moving, or you can hear the echo of something coming through, or you can feel the vibration, like alluding to what they already know is a thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I did want to say, I want to touch on this too, like about quickly, Joe, on about how good things can happen too, right?
Oh yeah.
So when that timer hits 0, like in 3 rounds, something will happen. It doesn't just have to be bad, like the lava rising.
Yeah.
It could be, like the Hunger Games, like the supply drop happens, right?
Right.
Like there's a little pack of gear and supplies. Like
oh wait, no, it was this. No, it was that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad.
Or in D4 rounds, like you're fighting the Xenos and reinforcements show up.
Right.
Right. like that sort of thing. Like, oh, we've got to last for 3 rounds before we get some help. So it could mean a good thing happening too.
Right. Like you've got the water systems turned back on. You're sitting here as the core is overheating. Heat's rising in the room. Boom, roll that timer out. Man, we've got 3 rounds until the cooling system gets that water fresh and pumped back over here. We got to do some stuff to try and keep this thing cool before it goes nuclear. We got 3 rounds.
Yep. Or, I like them when they're bad. The end of Red Sword, the engines are overloaded. Yes. You've got D4 rounds to escape the shit before it
Red Sword. Up. There's an environmental timer. Right off the bat, you hit him in the beginning with that pulse wave out of the Dark Star. Then you're rolling a timer. They already know what's coming. That pulse wave is coming back, guys. That pulse wave is coming back.
Every D4 rounds, you potentially are going to take damage. Yeah, and it's just and it's relentless too. So that's another great use of it for those sort of relentless pressing things, or like.
And that's an explained eminence. As the book mentions, that it's coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's no secret.
Okay. So I think we've done just all right. So now take us, Joe, into some of the different types of timers.
Yeah, well, I know you had special fondness for the world timer. We'll come back around on that one.
Thank you.
Because I also love a world timer. But you can have a bit more dangerous, or possibly more friendly, with the turn timer. Instead of counting down on the GM's turn on once per round, it counts down on every single player's turn. Like, I'm the GM, I roll that timer. Ooh, it's a 4. It's Alex's turn, I drop it to a 3. It's Dennis's turn, I drop it to a 2. It's Chuck's turn, I drop it to a 1. Boy, it comes around to Xander, and I'm sorry, pal. Timer just expired.
Yes.
Those 4 turns are up, and it's happening now. So the turn timer can be a great spin, but it might be a good thing too.
Yep.
Kind of a thing. So those are just fast.
Man, turn timers are brutal, right? Like,
oh god, yeah.
Because you will blow through those like so fast.
Right. And even worse, if it's one that it's a bad thing. Like, exactly. Going back to the Xenos, like that door is like already like buckling, like it's wrenched open at one point. We've got, bolts that are like wrenched and twisted out of the way and rotted, and those aliens are coming through. That's what it is. And that turn timer rolls, and you see 2 turns, and you're like,
I'm gonna roll it right now.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's 3. So in
3 turns.
In 3 turns.
That means Alex gets to go, Dennis gets to go, and on Chuck's turn, they're in.
They're in.
Just that fast. Like, imminent.
Imminent.
The terror.
Exactly. That sort of stuff.
Right?
Killer.
Ooh. And then we've got this static death timer. This sort of talking about instead of, because we currently roll a D4 when we're dying. Yep. Back in Core 2E, it used to be a D6, but took a little, put a little more tooth on it, gave it a little more bite. But this one is suggesting that instead of rolling a D4 for that death timer, just give everybody a static number of 3.
Yeah. So
drop to 0. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just here to say, so this is another variation of the tool for your DM toolbox, right? Because sometimes when I'm doing encounter design, I'm like, I don't want to leave this to random chance. Yeah. I want to make this a precise number of rounds that the players have to get a thing accomplished or to avoid a certain fate. So, for example, if I'm designing a trap, let's just say it's a spike wall, like crushing down the corridor, and when it gets to the end, you're going to be impaled, right? I don't want to roll a D4. That feels a little bit, because if I roll a 1, man, that thing's just crushing across, and these players are impaled, right? They don't have a chance. Right. So I might say,
conversely, if you roll a 4, that might be a round too much.
Might be too much. So I'm going to say this is a static 3, or I'm going to say it's a static 2. Right. Or heck, maybe depending on what I'm doing, it might be a static 6. Yep. So, the young girl in the burning of New Haven, right? Yep. I'm going to say, just out of the jump, you've got 6 rounds before she's dead.
Period. That's a terrible one to come in and roll a 1 on.
Exactly.
Because the players just walk in, you've kind of got like an L shape that they have to navigate through. So at first glance, they only hear commotion. They really can't see them. And that's a terrible spot to roll a 1 when the goal is to try and save the innocent girl.
Right, well, they may not have a chance, and they've still got to fight through those witch hunters and untie her ropes and free her from the burning pyre, right? Yeah. You probably don't want to leave that one up a chance. So I might, when I design that encounter or I run that encounter, here's a static 6, but every round it's going to tick down. So yeah, that's another tool in your DM toolbox. Great one, Joe.
Yeah, not just static death timers as listed. You could definitely do that for any of them.
Yeah, I would just, instead of static death, I would just call it a static timer. You can set a static timer instead of rolling for it. And it doesn't always have to be a D4. It could be a D6. Yep. It could be a D8. It could be a D12, depending on what you're trying to accomplish.
Ooh, yes.
Joe, you've got a good one too. Which we'll talk about when we get to world timers.
Right? Oh yeah. So next week we've got some abilities and things, or control casting, especially if like you're using spell burn and such. Yes. We've got like that reload or that recharge. Some really big things. I know I can't think of it off the top of my head. I know there's like a couple different loot items that do some great huge effect, and then you roll a D4 to find out when you can reload it or when it's fully charged back up. I know there's some sci-fi loot. I should have. Oh, didn't do me own what?
Yeah, or I used to look at it like a cooldown timer, right?
Yeah, so exactly. That's the word for it.
Yeah, so so that's another tool in your DM toolbox, a cooldown type timer. For like a special ability. I always look at like Borderlands, right? Like you've got your like your core ability that's really OP or whatever. But and you get to bust it out periodically, but you've got a maybe a 4-round cooldown. So you can do it static, there you go. Or it's a 1d4. You roll it and it's random.
Yep, exactly.
You recharge and you're back up.
Right, and like the spell burn bit. If you are using that, if you fail that whiz roll after casting 4 times, well, now you've got that 4 rounds or so that you have to wait.
Correct.
To cool back down to be able to cast spells again.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can use that for guns too. So let's say you find the mother of all railguns, right? Yeah. But it's got that huge ammo box. Like it may take you D4 rounds to to get that thing back live again.
Hey, even Borderlands, similar things. When you've got some of those gnarly rockets, the gnarly rocket launchers, it holds 3, and you can fire those bad boys out. But then when you go to hit the X, they flip it down. They have
right.
Yeah, cartridge goes out.
Yes, and you're vulnerable all that
time.
Could
be the D4 rounds of reloading. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good limit too. For a lot of those weapons that do a ton of like area effect damage, right? So you're not just spamming those attacks, right?
Right.
Which is a little bit cheesy.
4 times ultimate in to everything in near.
Yeah,
Boom.
yeah. I'm just gonna use my rocket launcher every round and do D4 ultimate every round. Like, man, get out of here. Like, go away.
Right.
Like, no. Like, you'll do it in 4 rounds.
Right. Roll the die.
Yep.
One of the other fun bits is as a substitute for effort.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to have it tied to doing effort, a lot of times it's give me a harder effort for this or for that, which definitely isn't a thing you need to do all the time, because not every door should be so complicated that it takes time. But some things you can substitute the timer for that effort. You can say, like, no matter what, like using your cutting torch to cut through that bulkhead to be able to escape is going to take 3 rounds, period.
Exactly.
Right. We're talking 2-inch steel bulkheads, and your cutting torch ain't that fast.
Exactly.
Just some simple things like that, or that is going to take 1 round no matter what.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, which is kind of an opposite on effort, because effort generally proposes that it's going to be 1 to 2 rounds, because not everybody's going to be able to drop 10 points of effort in 1 round.
Or it could be 3 or 4. Like, if you keep rolling low.
Yeah, exactly.
It's some random, effort, which I think we need to devote an episode to at some point. Is really a way to sort of elongate time and slow players down.
Yeah. It is a time control.
A timer used in this way, as an effort substitute, can have the same effect, but it's a bit more of a controlled, exact mechanism. Yeah. Right? So, like, in D4 rounds, like, this will happen. The example it uses, like, it will take D4 rounds to decode the secret writing.
Right? Yeah. Exactly.
Like that sort of thing. You're not just chipping away at it using effort. Like, you could just use a timer, and it would work great. So that shows, that you're just kind of having that steady kind of work. If you stay at it every round, then you will get the thing that you seek.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Using it as an effort substitute like that, if they have to get up for a round and do something else, the timer's not going down.
Right, exactly.
Because that timer goes down when they are actively working on it. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those things I would not have them rolling every single round to see if they can do it.
Right.
Like, if it's an int roll to crack the password, roll it once, cool, you got it. You are working on that. You do not need to roll again.
Yep.
But just you automatically are doing it every round that you are focused on doing it.
Yeah, the great scenario is, like, it's going to take you D4 rounds to cut through while your buddies are holding off the Xenos.
Yeah,
right?
You're locked in.
you're locked in.
You're cutting torch.
God, cut faster. And then you get into some of those fun rules, like what could increase or decrease the timer, right? Like, could I short circuit this timer somehow and get ahead?
Yeah.
The other one that I would say that would, along the same lines, is you could also use a timer to represent movement. Like, hey, we want to zip across town in altered state on our motorcycles. Yes. How long is it going to take to get across town to head off the thing? Oh, it's going to take you 3 rounds. 2 rounds, 1 round. If you're lucky.
Right. Oh, hold on. I think I know a shortcut. Let me see if I can. Remember this shortcut or figure this shortcut out. Can I make a wisdom roll to try and knock some speed off of that?
Oh yeah, you made a wisdom roll. Yep, Joe, you knocked 1 round off your time to get across town.
Cool. Right. And in game, that's the oi, tighten his left.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Don't get on the express.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I want to talk about World Timer in particular, because I'm super proud of that one, because I invented that one. So I ran it, I busted it out for the first time in the old RFE video where I ran the Aliens game for Hankerin and some of those dudes. Who were part of the council at that time. And in essence, after they sort of woke up from their pods, they realized that the last dropship would be leaving the overrun planet in D10 rounds. And that was the world timer. Like, when that timer hit 0, like, if they hadn't made it...
Game over, man.
Yeah, if they hadn't made it across the complex, because of it getting overrun, they were going to miss the last boat off the planet, and they were just stuck, and that meant presumably that they were done. Like, that the alien threat had taken over the whole planet or the whole facility, and their world as they knew it would be an end. I borrowed it from like, if you've ever played the Buffy the Vampire Slayer board game, where it has like a time tracker for the sun. If you ever played Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, some of those scenarios, like if the timer tracks down to 0, everything is overrun and the game is just over, like you're done. So that's when I busted it out for the first time. And it only happens when they get to the main computer and they realize
That's when it triggers.
Yeah, when they realize, oh, there is a drop. There's a like the Sulaco is in orbit, right, and there is a drop ship and it's leaving in D10 rounds.
We have to cross the complex now.
We got to get, and if we get slowed down or we backtrack or we deviate, we're gonna miss our boat and the game ends.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's done. Right.
Yeah, I used one in Whispers in the Well.
So
or the adventure I wrote, like
correct.
Once they find out the scenario that's happening, once it officially starts when they're in the thing, it starts out, it's a static world timer. You have 20 rounds. And that's it. And that is game over, man. We're Swiss cheese.
Exactly. Yeah. And having played that, like that time pressure is super intense. Like as you're like that force field is just like, closing in, and then everything is just done. Like you're dead. So
Sphere of Annihilation waits for no one.
Yeah, the Sphere of Annihilation waits for no else. But I just love that when, as a creator, like having busted that out on Hankering, like early on, like way back, and then now to see it codified and as a part of ICRPG and people using it for their games, going forward, like it makes me so happy. And
I bet, dude.
especially since it was used in the context of an Aliens game, like I love that to pieces. So, just to recap in terms of like some of these tools, right? Again, they don't have to be a D4. It could be a D6, D8. In your case, Joe, Under the Well. Please go check that out, folks. It's amazing. It's a D20.
It's a static 20.
So and that was my next point. So they don't have to be random. It could be static, right? Just like.
But one thing you should prepare yourself for, if you're using like a D6 or a D8 or a D10, obviously you've already got it in your mind that you potentially want it to be drawn out, that it could be a bigger number.
Right.
But you need to be prepared that you could still roll a 1 in those situations.
Yep.
So maybe try and think about, in that situation, do you really want to leave it up to a D8? Do you want the chance, or are you thinking you want it to be between 5 and 8 rounds?
Yeah.
So sometimes, let that help you decide whether you want a static number or a dice roll. Like, do you just want to turn it up to 11 and go, yeah, I'm rolling this D6 and potentially it could be 1 round. Mm-hmm. You could get lucky and have 6 rounds, but.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. Well, it's something else that I will do too, in terms of a DM practice. Again, it's my tool, right? Like I may say, hey, this young lady will burn up in D6 rounds. I'm going to roll this, but I'm going to throw out a 1.
Yep.
So meaning if I get a 1, I'm going to re-roll it. And the result will be anywhere between 2 and 6 rounds. Right. Exactly. And so you can do that too. Like if you recognize that it tumbling on a 1 would be unfair.
Yeah.
Right. Then in that case, then the worst result is a 2, which is really still really bad.
Right. Imminent.
Yeah. Like you really feel it imminent. So on the other hand, if you get a 6, the players breathe a little sigh of relief.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But you still got to move.
But you still got to move. You can't mess around, because in terms of the tempo, like, as you guys found out in the Multicrew game, like if you lose that tempo, like bad stuff can happen. Like it can start to snowball bad, right?
Yeah.
So you can't wait around. You can't mess around. The other thing that I would say too is 2 other points. One is sometimes when a timer isn't the right answer, like you roll a timer and let's say you roll a 4, and the players have now suddenly gotten way ahead in the tempo, and now for 3 rounds, they're just sitting there, kind of twiddling their thumbs, right?
The pressure goes away and like all the air's out of the balloon. It's not fun anymore. It didn't even make that squeak sound.
It didn't fly across the room. Yeah, and the game just suddenly grinds to a halt and it feels really flat. There's nothing wrong as a DM, and I've done this. I've had that flat moment and been like kicking myself later.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with just wiping that timer off the board and saying, "Hey guys, you know what? You crushed this, and now I need to take this away." Or
Right.
if it's just like, "Hey, there's another wave of spiders that they're not going to wait 3 more rounds for this to happen. Like they're going to show up now."
Right. Aha. That actually brings us into an interesting bit, kind of segueing right into timer damage. Something that I feel as a tool the GM can use and the players can use.
That's
and
where I was headed next.
Right. I think right where you're going with that thing with the spiders, they're taking their time, say it is 3 rounds, and that's a world of time for what's going on. Players have like some downtime. Sure, it's 3 rounds, but they've got so much space and air to breathe and room that's when, as a GM, because they're going to be moving, they're going to be doing something. The players have something to do on their turn. They do that thing. Oh, well, you clipped a web as you did that. Ooh, my timer goes down by 1 because they're zeroing in on your location. You now have 2 rounds. So that's a little bit of the GM applying some damage, so to speak, to the timer and chipping away at it.
Oh yeah. Or here's my favorite one, Joe. Like I've got 2 examples. One is like I rolled the spiders are going to show up. They're crawling up the wall. They're going to show up in 4 rounds, right? But we're in this sort of like area, and the players go, "Hello, hello." I'm like, "Did you just call out?" He's like, "Yeah, I just called out." I'm like, "Well, now that 4 is now down to a 2."
Right? It's halved.
Yeah, I just flip it. Right?
Or everything knows where you are now.
Yeah, exactly. Or you've got 4 rounds until the orcs show up, and then the fool of a took knocks a bucket down the well. Guess what?
Yeah.
They're
coming now.
We're now to 0. Goom,
right?
Goom, goom, goom.
Right? That takes my timer away completely.
Exactly. So don't be afraid to wipe them off and potentially, or have those events in the fiction kind of do damage to that timer and increase the increase the imminence. And remember, you're the DM, you're in control.
Yeah.
And if if you're flying by the seat of your pants, like I do, and kind of letting the fiction dictate a little bit about what's happening, your players aren't going to know any different. Like they're just be like, "Oh yeah, that totally makes sense. Like I just knocked a bucket down a well. Of course, the bad guys are going to show up now. They're not going to wait.
Because it does make sense.
Yeah, they're not going to wait 4 rounds. So just wipe it off the table and be like, nope. You just made a ton of loud noise. Now the threat is here. But Joe, you were going to talk about.
Yeah, I was going to talk about on the other side as a player, because we did cover kind of how to push it as a GM, how to damage your own timer.
Yep.
But as a player, let's potentially go to the Burning in New Haven scenario, which you guys got to watch that video. Beautiful, brilliant campaign start. But anyway, this timer, like, say we're down to a 2. We've come around. We rolled a 2. They're going to light that fire. We can see the witch hunters around. We see homie with the torch, or we see the orc running towards the walls with the bomb. Boom. 2 rounds. That's going to happen. As a player, okay, well, I happen to be a magic user. I want to use my magic to do a gust of wind to blow his torch out. Woof. I succeed. The torch gets blown out. Timer's gone.
Yep.
He's got to relight the torch and roll a fresh timer before he can go to start lighting it, or directly light the thing himself from his flint and steel.
Well, or it's just frozen at a 2.
Or it's frozen
as the witch hunter over there suddenly lights his torch.
Right? See, there's the GM ruling. There you go.
Yep.
But it did stop the timer from ticking down that round.
Exactly.
So there's a bonus.
You can either freeze it, or, as Joe points out, great DM tool. Oh my gosh, now that timer has to start completely over.
Yeah. Or, I think there's even in Warp Shell, I do believe there was a guy that could add to the timer. Was I thinking that right? Oh, no, that's attacking target. Totally different thing.
Yep.
But there could be other ways that you could slow things down. Like
but I'm pretty sure, Joe, somewhere there is a time control spell where you can influence a timer like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Because
there's definitely got to be one written in there.
Well, yeah, because Zeke did it facing Durithrax.
Yes.
And basically the whole place was going to be destroyed in, I think it was 1d4 rounds, and I think Hanker rolled a 1 in
Yeah,
that game.
to slow it down and stop it.
And Zeke was able to, using some of that Cosgot Time Wizard magic, basically add a round to that timer. So instead of it being 1 round, it fired in 2 rounds, and that gave everybody time to open a portal and scramble across the board and escape before that whole area was destroyed.
Exactly. Gave us just the time we needed.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
So that sort of stuff, in terms of attacking timers. The other thing that you could do, which I did in that Moldy game we were talking about with the flaming skulls, right? So Joe, you were really great. Like, you had destroyed one of those skulls, and you kicked its remains off the bridge way down into the lava below, right? And so
trying to delay it. Exactly.
Yeah, so it was going to reform, but then it also still had to fly all that distance. So one of the things that I did in that scenario is I held off rolling the timer for a whole round. I'm like, oh, well, they're going to get a break. Like, it's not even going to get to reform for a round. Or it's going to roll to reform, but it's going to take it an extra round even to fly up and get near. So
I just had it in the Blood and Snow game that I ran that I totally ripped off Prey because that movie's amazing. But when they were crossing the ice sheets, I had blowing wind. It was coming every D4 rounds. And Chuck used his navigator tag to see if he could find a way to keep them out of the wind. And that was something like he made his roll. I was like, yes, 100%. That is going to delay the wind coming because you found a way to slip through.
Yep.
So that was a way of attacking the timer and making it longer. As a player, it's giving you more time to do things.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to speed it the other way. Like you're trying to get the doors to close, and holy crap, this thing takes forever. It's a roll top. I've got to pull the chain. Oh my gosh, what is going on here? I've got 4 rounds, till I'm going to get this closed. And then another player comes up and says, hey, you know what? I would like to jump up and grab onto the bottom and try and use my weight to help yank this thing down.
Yep.
Get ready to let go of the chain. Boom, you make your dex roll to jump up there and get it, and the GM might say, cool, like, roll me a basic effort. How quickly do you speed this up? I mean, maybe not basic effort, but roll me a D4 and we're going to knock that much time off of it.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. Or, it's like Hudson, right? Like, Hudson is like cutting through the door, and then Vasquez pulls out her cutter and she joins it, right? And
now, so they're doing from 2 sides.
Yeah, and now suddenly, right, it gets reduced even more, right?
Right? Yeah, definitely. It's like excellent. Cut your time in half.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Things like that.
All that kind of stuff.
Right? Attack that timer.
Man, that
as the GM and as a player.
Yep, absolutely. Golly, I think we've covered timers, and adding sort of time pressure to your games.
Yeah.
Again, you don't have to use it in every case. From my standpoint, I try to think, what is the effect that I'm trying to achieve here?
Exactly.
What pace
am I looking for?
Yes. How do I want the players slowed down? How do I want them to feel this sort of pressure? What is going to happen when this thing hits 0? And only then applying the timer to that encounter or that scenario. And if it doesn't call for it, right, then don't use a timer.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Or if you mess up and you apply a timer and your game kind of sags, just say, hey, you know what, guys? I think I messed up. I rolled a timer here. This, I don't know that this scenario really calls for one. Let me just take that off the board. Right? Nobody will be mad. Like, nobody
they'll be
mad.
like, cool.
They'll be like, yeah, cool, good work, man. Good. That's good looking out, DM. For our fun and our enjoyment. So don't feel that onus. Like, if you sense that happening, that you've got to tie yourself to the mast of that sinking ship and go down. Like, just fix it in the moment, right? Like, it's not a big deal. I promise you. Your players will be more happy with you, if you correct a mistake in the moment. Right? Rather than like let it carry on,
Exactly.
So, wow, I think that's about the best advice I got.
Right? Dang, did our timer drop to 0?
I think it dropped to 0 in record time this week, Joe.
Man, wow.
Yeah, right?
Ooh. We're feeling focused.
Yeah. I was feeling a little bit of time pressure. So. Oh man. Well, hey everyone.
That was great stuff.
Thanks so much for joining us. Couldn't be more pleased. Super grateful for everybody who's listening, for all the nice comments that we've gotten, and for all of the cool support. If you have a great way that you have used a timer in your game, man, leave us a comment. We'd love to read about it.
Yeah.
For sure. And till then, Joe.
Yeah. Take a hero coin and always roll ultimate. We hope to see you guys in the funny papers. We'll catch you at the table soon. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye, everyone.